Well, it's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Been listening to your stuff for a long time.
Thanks.
So, why did it take so long to make your record?
Part of the time was spent getting off one label and getting on another label. I was on Chameleon and they closed down. And then I signed to American, but there's a little bit of a lapse in there in between that, you know, because it always takes time to shop around, get the new label, get situated. Then I got on American, then we started. The actual time that we were recording, though, was only over a period of a couple of years. Everybody's always saying 6 years, but that's just because it was 6 years since the last record. But, you know, I was still working the last record in '93. I was still out. You know, I was on the road doing stuff. But anyway, so then we went in and started recording, and we recorded we started at the beginning of '95, and we ended in December of '96. So it was almost exactly a 2-year period from the time we actually started and the time we actually finished. You know, but then after December, between like the whole last year, I was just in limbo because American Records started going through all these changes. And the record was finished. I mean, it wasn't mastered, but we were done recording, but I couldn't do anything with the record the whole last year, which wasn't my fault. So, you know, there's a lot of other stuff going on.
So do you think that make it harder to let go of the record? Because you just, an indefinite, time frame for putting it out?
I guess it was probably too much time, kind of dragging on.
Well, I heard that you wanted to go back and make it less perfect. That there was a time period where you thought that the record was too perfect or too slick.
I don't know, not really. The whole thing of it was I started working with Gurf and me in the studio in Austin, and we'd done the last few records together pretty much the same way. You know, he played all the guitar parts on the last 2 records, and you know, and I don't know, things felt a little stale to me, kind of like we were doing the same record all over again, only new songs. And I just got to that frustration point where I was we recorded a bunch of tracks, and you know, things were sounding good and everything, but there were a couple of tracks that I was having. Had to go back and sing a vocal over on a couple of them, and I couldn't get, and it just didn't feel comfortable. And after a point, I said, you know, some of these tracks aren't right because I can't sing to them.
I've had that feeling.
And that's where Gurf and I started butting heads, because he kept saying, no, the tracks are great, and I kept saying, no, there's something wrong, it feels too stiff, I want to go in and recut a couple of these. And so we started butting heads about that. And then we kind of just took a break. We changed studios, went to another studio, and we kept trying to sing the same song over and over and over and over, you know. It's you know, just beating it into the ground. Then this thing happened sort of accidentally, though, which sort of led me in a different direction. Because we would have continued on. We would have, you know, figured it out and done it and everything. But then we took a break, and I went back to Nashville, and I sang on Steve Earle's record, I Feel All Right. So then I got introduced to the world of Ray Kennedy world, which is, you know, the way he engineers things, the way he recorded my vocal sound, and it just blew my mind, you know. And because all of a sudden I heard my voice in the way I'd never heard it before in the studio. And then I heard Steve's roughs of that record, you know. And then I said, man, this is how I want my record to sound. This is how I want it to sound, you know. So it was a kind of a combination of having gone in with Stephen Ray and sung that vocal thing on his song, and kind of got all excited about the sound of what they were doing. And so one thing led to another, and you know, they offered to go back in with me and recut a couple of things, but we weren't necessarily going to do the whole thing over again. It was just more of
it's just that
let's go in and kind of, I don't know.
Like a domino effect. Like once you did a couple things and we're happy.
That's what happened. We got in there and we got on a roll, and it was just.
Just keep playing.
Everything just sounded better. I mean, I'm sorry, but you know, I love Gurf, but that's just the bottom line. I don't know. It's not like, you know, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde or anything. You know, it's just.
Well, I couldn't. I mean, I just the songs. When I heard that you went back to make it imperfect or something like that. I thought that was probably pretty much of an exaggeration because
It
the record
was an
sounds pretty
exaggeration.
perfect. You know, like the record doesn't sound really like tossed off.
I don't know
you
where that came from, that thing. There have been a lot of misconceptions about this whole thing. It's really gotten blown out of proportion.
Right.
You know,
So how do you feel about the response? I mean, it's
well,
like
now
an
I feel
unbelievable
great.
response. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I feel somewhat vindicated, I have to admit, you know, because after all the trials I went through and everybody telling me, you know, that I was a pain in the ass and a perfectionist and, you know, the big falling out I had with Gurf and all the rest of it, you know, and, oh, you're making a mistake, you're doing the wrong thing, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about and all this.
Right.
And now, here it is, you know, the proof isn't the pudding, so, I mean, you know.
Right, no, that's great. I mean, I think
because I have good instincts about things. That's all there is to it.
It's just one of the hardest things in the world to me is to take this song that you play on an acoustic guitar for months and months by yourself and like try and get 4 other people to understand the nuances of it. Maybe incorrect even, just in the way you play it.
Part of that's a good point that you brought up actually, because before, I think that was kind of the defining line between the early tracks and these tracks. I had never really played my guitar that much on my last couple of records.
Right.
You know, just because I didn't feel that secure about. I didn't think it was necessary, which is ridiculous because I wrote the song on the guitar.
Right, I was assuming that.
And everything, it creates a whole kind of vibe, and my phrasing and everything is all around that.
Right.
But then what would happen is I would kind of turn it over to Gurf, you know, to the band and to Gurf and everything, and kind of put down my guitar, and then the track would be centered more around the band arrangement of it. So then when I would go in to try to sing it, all of a sudden it feels awkward because it's gotten away from the root thing of how I wrote it.
Well, the template's not there anymore for, like, I mean, when you sing and play acoustic guitar, you're physically connected to the pocket of where you want to sing and all that.
That's the thing. See, so that's, I think, and it was kind of a learning process, you know, because I'd done it that way the record before and the record before that, and didn't realize that that's why it felt weird.
Right.
You know, and I never really questioned it.
Right.
You know, and it was just kind of a thing where it started feeling weird again for the third record, and I'm going, wait a minute, you know, things are feeling weird again. There's something wrong here. And then when I went in with Steve, he encouraged me to play my guitar more on more of the tracks.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, you know, I mean, I suddenly had this enlightenment thing of, wow, you know, I mean, I need to play my guitar on the record. What a concept, you know, I mean, it's like night and day, though.
I know the feeling, though.
You know what I mean?
Everybody around me in my band is a lot better musician than I am. So I was feel like, why should I have to play?
You didn't think it was that important? Big deal.
Well, no, I've done it for a long time, and then like over time, I started feeling insecure about it. So I was like, well, maybe I just shouldn't play on this one. And every time we've ever tried that, luckily, it hasn't been like a 2-year experiment. It's been like, that doesn't work.
Well,
I've got to
you figured it out sooner than I did.
No,
I just
got frustrated quicker. I
nobody's
guess,
really talked about this part of it. But this is really it in a nutshell. What you're saying, I think, is what kind of pushed me. It's just that it took me a little bit longer. Unfortunately, I had to go through that whole thing before I figured it out. But you know, and Steve also was playing guitar on the tracks, and he's such a great rhythm guitar player himself.
Right.
So in general, there was just more of a kind
of... That's liberating, too.
And that's real liberating. And so it gave it... the tracks all have this edge thing more. But in between me playing more and him playing, you know, like the beginning of Can't Let Go, I'm playing that little dobro part, you know.
Right.
And just there's just stuff like that just kind of like... And then the band falls in around me.
Right.
And, you know, a lot of the tracks ended up being scratch vocals.
That's the Lucinda Williams records. You've got to be at the center of it.
Right.
It's hard.
And that's what, and I didn't realize that before.
Right.
You know.
So, were you writing other songs during this whole process that, like...
No.
Were you like...
I haven't been able, I got sucked up into the whole vortex of this whole
Right.
thing, and it just kind of drained my.
Well, it's hard. I
Creative.
think it's great. Like the most creative period is always like right after a record's done or
Yeah,
released.
I'm starting to kind of feel
Like
it
feel it coming back.
Yeah.
Because like once you get like past the first like 4 or 5 songs in a record, you kind of have this idea of what the record's going to be. So it's inhibiting because you want to write other. If you're like trying to write during that period, you want to write songs that fit in with those songs.
Yeah.
You're like, and that's not what being like writing songs is all about. It's not like creating something that fits with
Right.
something else. It's creating a single thing. You know. Like,
Exactly.
but making an album, it's hard to like finish it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
do you write but like your father's a poet.
Yeah.
Right? So do you write poetry other than lyrics? Do
Not
you?
really. No, I don't. I think I really probably, when I was growing up, I probably wanted to be a writer, and this is the closest I
Mhm.
could get to actually writing. Because it's, it's a different thing,
Mhm.
writing poetry and writing songs, and I've never,
Oh yeah, yeah. Mm.
I've just never felt that I've never gotten into writing poetry.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Do you interact with your father at all on like
Yeah, I
lyrics
do.
and things?
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I've always sent him stuff just to see,
Mhm.
look at from a writing point of view.
Mhm.
Because I do, even though I was writing songs and not writing poetry, I still wanted it to,
like
be
it.
good.
Mhm.
And that's how I learned, really, was over the years just having him critique stuff
Uh-huh.
and send it back and say, why don't you, maybe this might be better like this, or just the same, like if you went to a creative writing class
Right,
or
right.
something, he's kind of become my mentor, I guess.
That's great.
Which I think
You're lucky to
everybody
have-
everybody needs somebody who's better than they are.
Well, yeah. and it's like
You've got to have someone to learn from.
Right. Well,
Whoever it is.
It's like listening to, like using CDs, like other people's records, as like an oral tradition doesn't really work beyond a certain point. I mean, you can sit and learn all the Beatles records and learn all the
Right.
Bob Dylan records, but you don't have them smiling back at you when you actually learn something and
Exactly.
reinforcing that you're doing something right. Like
Yeah.
whoever is great, the greatest. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. You do need somebody to like bounce things off of.
Yeah.
And the rock community today, to me, is like really insulated from each other. I don't see a lot. I mean, maybe it's different. Like you found like Steve to work with and Steve
Yeah.
Earle in Nashville, but it's like rock bands don't tend to like hang out and like exchange ideas and
Not
stuff.
like writers. Well, it's not really the
Maybe
same
it's-
kind of writing.
Maybe it's
I mean,
me.
No.
I offend people too much. They're like,
No.
yeah, nobody will talk to me anymore.
I think it's a different kind of community. It's not a writing community.
Right.
It's a different.
There's not a
kind
real
of thing.
focus on it.
The thing is, I mean, like when Dylan started out, he was hanging out with guys like Allen Ginsberg.
Right. Right.
Like folk musicians hung out with writers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I don't see as much happening now. That
Right.
seems like there used to be more of that going on.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't even know where writers hang out anymore. Like, where can you? I want to
Yeah.
like sign up for where I can go and meet a writer, hang out
Yeah.
with them.
Probably more
But who's the modern
Around the
equivalent?
college campuses, probably.
Yeah, I
more,
guess so. But
No.
that doesn't sound
City
like
Lights
any,
bookstore.
that doesn't sound like any fun. That's the difference. Is those people are having fun. I think. Were you on the Lilith Fair at all?
I was on 2 of them.
2 of them.
yeah.
How did you?
Well, the
like that?
audiences were great.
Mhm.
I mean, it was packed. The amount of people who were there,
Yeah. Right.
was pretty impressive.
Yeah.
The number of people who came.
JR guitar player was on the Lilith Fair for a while
Really?
with Garrison Starr, like playing on the second stage,
Hmm.
and he said it was a pretty interesting place to be as a male rock guy.
Really?
I think he had a really good time.
I didn't really notice that much of there wasn't really, there weren't any vibes or anything. I mean,
Right.
as far as,
Well, he wasn't
I
saying
mean,
that like not like a
Yeah.
male hating like soiree.
he just meant there weren't that many male musicians.
Well, I guess there weren't that many male musicians. I don't think he understood. I don't think he. I think it's just hard to understand I think from the outside, some of the appeal of some of these softer, like singing, like divas,
Yeah.
modern divas, you know, like and like how it's not really empowered sounding at all, you know, to me. I don't know, I could be wrong, but he said the best thing that he saw. I don't think he was on the dates with you, but Misdemeanor Elliott said that was like 30 minutes of pure excitement, like entertainment.
I didn't see that. I don't know if she was on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I know what you mean. I mean, there wasn't a lot of, you know, just kind of kick-ass kind of
Right.
stuff, you know. But there isn't on this either.
No.
I mean, on the Newport thing, that's what we were talking. You know, because the original Newport Folk Festival, Paul Butterfield Blues Band.
Right.
You know, I think there needs to be more blues and period.
Right.
In this stuff, more like, you know, real kind of, you know, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Rory Block is a great blues
Right.
female, contemporary blues, you know, still carrying on that tradition of that old blues style, you know. And I don't know if she's been on any of the Lilith Fair things, and you know, like I could see more people like that being on there, more of a diversity.
Right.
I mean, still have some of that stuff like there is now, but why not mix it up a little bit more, you know?
There was a song that you recut off of one of your previous albums. On
I
the new
lost
record.
it.
Yeah. What was the reasoning behind that?
I was looking for another song to do, and I just pulled it out of the hat one day and
Well, it's a great song.
ended up with a different arrangement. Didn't want to put it on the record
Really?
at first. Yeah, I don't know, 'cause I think I'd outgrown the song kind of, and I wasn't sure if it sounded good anymore. But then everybody else liked it so much. So.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think you know, with all the attention that this record has gotten, and being someone who's listened to like your previous records a lot and really enjoyed them, part of me, with all due respect, feels like a certain amount of the attention has to be like people just realizing they missed the boat too.
Yeah.
That's like that is vindicating as well.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything, not judging the record or that it's like whatever, undeserving. It is, but it's like I feel like when I read some of these reviews, like I'm like, well, where were you where were you like 7 years ago?
Well, a lot of the reviewers, though, I mean, a lot of the writers actually did write about me before and have known about me for a while. Like Robert Christgau, who reviewed it for Rolling Stone, actually reviewed my second album, Folkways. It came out in 1980.
Oh, wow.
So he already knew about me and Steve Pond and, you know.
Right.
I've always gotten along well with music writers, probably because I grew up around writers and, you know, like Margaret Moser in Austin and Rob Patterson and, you know, those people.
That's great meeting you.
That's great to meet you too.
And have a good show.
Thanks.